So we're closing off the Mishnah of Gittin, the Mishnah of divorce. And we've said right the way through, of course, that the Mishnah is interested in edge cases. And in the ninth Mishnah, the ninth chapter, it gets into the question of where a betrothal or a divorce is not documented. So the Mishnah,
See the bugs and stuff? Okay.
so the Mishnah, the Mishnah explains Yatsa Shma Ba'ir Mukudeshet. So some report goes out in town saying she's betrothed. So it's not as we don't have the witnesses to the betrothal. It's a report. And by the way, the Gemara makes clear that we're talking about this has to be a reputable report. So maybe there's a celebration or something of that nature. So it's a material report going out into the town saying that she's betrothed, mukudeshet. Hare zo mukudeshet. She's considered to be betrothed, i.e., that she can't marry another man without a divorce document. And if the same person, the Mishnah goes on, mugoreshet. So let's say the rumor goes out she's divorced. Hare hi mugoreshet. She is divorced. The Gemara again applies this to the first case. In other words, a report's gone out into town that she's betrothed, she's considered betrothed. But if the same report goes out that she's divorced, she's divorced. In other words, if the first event doesn't have documentary evidence, then the second event doesn't require documentary evidence either. But there's always a but in the Mishnah. And the Mishnah concludes, Ubilvad shelo yehi sham mitla, provided that there's no mitla. A mitla is a reason or a justification or a qualification. We've translated here qualification. There's some reason to doubt the report. And of course, we don't know what this reason is. And the Mishnah goes on, Ve'ezahi mitla. What is a mitla? And the Mishnah brings a couple of examples. Garesh ish ploni et ishto al tznai. So maybe such and such a person divorced his wife with a condition. So this is not a regular divorce, it's a conditional divorce. So we're not really quite sure whether the divorce really took place or not, whether the condition was fulfilled. Or here is another example. Zarak la kidusheha, he threw her the betrothal money. And we've already learned, by the way, in this case, the betrothal money has to land closer to her than closer to him. Otherwise, she hasn't made a kinyan on the money. Zarak la kidusheha, he threw the betrothal money, safek karov la, safek karov lo, but it's uncertain as to whether it landed nearer to her or nearer to him. Zohi mitla. This is a qualification. So these are the kind of situations where we can't really just rely on a verbal report. We need something more substantive. But generally, we can rely on a verbal report. And maybe this idea of relying on a verbal report is a link to the very last Mishnah in the tractate, which looks at grounds to divorce. And in order to understand this Mishnah, we need to go back to the verse, the beginning of chapter 24 of Deuteronomy, Devarim. We're in a Sedra, we read this Sedra a couple of weeks ago. When a man has taken a wife and married her, we're going to come back to this verse, by the way, in the next tractate of Kiddushin. When a man takes a wife and marries her. But the verse goes on to say, if she finds no favor in his eyes, because he found some unseemly thing in her. And then he's going to divorce her. And the Mishnah is going to play with these three ideas that she didn't find favor in his eyes. Maybe that's grounds for divorce. Or maybe he found some ervat davar. Well, a davar is a thing. And of course, erva refers to promiscuity. So what's ervat davar? A promiscuous thing? Well, the meaning's unclear, but the Mishnah, we'll see the Mishnah plays with this. Beit Shammai omrim lo yigaresh adam et ishto ela im ken matzah ba'erva. A man shouldn't divorce his wife unless he's found her guilty of, and this is really promiscuity, of adultery. And the translation of unseemly conduct here is it's too soft, actually. The text of the Mishnah in Kaufman is particular. It says ervat. It's promiscuity. So, and we've learned before, by the way, Beit Shammai say that promiscuity is the only grounds for divorce. So Beit Shammai would hold on to a divorce, would hold on to a marriage, except for those grounds. And by the way, in the first century, we can find disputes between, certainly between Christian groups and Jewish groups as to whether divorce is permitted. And the early Christians were very opposed to divorce. Maybe there's a reflection of there with Beit Shammai, whereas the rabbis, particularly, in general, were lenient on divorce. So maybe we're seeing an early Christian sort of a little bit, maybe the early Christians reflect Beit Shammai that in saying, look, divorce is not permitted except in the case of adultery. Kimat Saba Erva, because he found promiscuity there. Beit Hillel. Now, Beit Hillel, the halakha goes according to Beit Hillel. Beit Hillel omrim, afilu hikdicha tafshil. Beit Hillel says, even if she's just burnt the food, shenemar kimat sava davar, because he found a thing in her. So we remember the verse says ervat davar, an unseemly thing, a promiscuous thing. So Beit Shammai focus on erva, on promiscuity, and Beit Hillel focus on davar, on the thing. So Beit Hillel says essentially anything is grounds for divorce. And for Rabbi Akiva, we know Rabbi Akiva is a romantic, right? Rabbi Akiva is the one who says, "Ve'ahavta l're'echa kamocha," you shall love your neighbor as yourself, is the most important verse in the Torah. He has this romantic relationship with his own wife, who let him go away for 24 years to study and still welcomed him back at the end of that time. And Rabbi Akiva seems to say that if there's no love in a marriage, then it ends. Rabbi Akiva omer, so Rabbi Akiva says, afilu matzah acheret nava mimena, if he finds another one more beautiful than her. Because the verse says she finds no favor in his eyes. And I don't think maybe Rabbi Akiva, we could read Rabbi Akiva different ways. Maybe he's saying, I don't think he's saying, go and marry the next youngest woman you find. I think he's saying that if there's no emotional basis to this marriage, then it's a reason to end it. I think that's what he's saying. And the Gemara, I would say in closing the tractate, the Gemara seems to object. So the closing words of the Gemara are, the Gemara closes with Rabbi Eliezer, who says, Kol hamagaresh ishto rishona afilu mizbeach morida lav demaot. Rabbi Eliezer says, anyone who divorces his first wife, even the altar sheds tears over him. And he quotes from Malachi, and I just to shorten the source sheet, I've shortened the quote slightly, but Malachi closes with the words, Vamartem, and you say, Alma, why? Why the tears? Al ki Adonai he'id beincha uvein eshet nurecha, because the Lord has been a witness between you and the wife of your youth. That God is a witness to the first marriage. Asher atah bagadata, and you've betrayed her by divorcing her. You betrayed her. V'hi charata, she's your companion. V'eshet britecha, and the wife of your covenant. That's Malachi chapter 2 verse 14. Divorcing your wife is like treachery. You cannot divorce. It's a tragic event to divorce your wife. And the tractate ends here. Much of it's very legalistic, but there is a tension through the tractate between divorce and repair, and actually between emotion and law. And we can see that the Gemara chooses to finish on emotion rather than finishing on law. So that's how we close the tractate of Gittin. Hadran alach Masechet Gittin will return to you, Masechet Gittin. Actually, will return to many of these themes in the tractate of Kiddushin, which starts next. Hadran alach Masechet Gittin will return to you, Masechet Gittin, vehadrach alan, and you will return to us. Da'atan alach Masechet Gittin, our mind is on you, Masechet Gittin, ve'da'tach alan, and your mind is on us. Lo nitnashe minach Masechet Gittin, we will not forget you, Masechet Gittin, ve'lo titnashe minach, and you will not forget us. Lo ba'alma hadain velo ba'alma da'ati, not in this world and not in the world to come.